I want to tell you about 7 fatal mistakes that MBA students make in startup business case presentations. Now, I've had the unique pleasure of serving as a judge, juror, and occasionally executioner for many case competitions. Over the years, I've noticed a series of mistakes that MBA students consistently make. So I wanted to highlight the top 7 and provide some methods for avoiding them. Number 1, lack of product validation. Number 2, unrealistic distribution strategy. Number 3, zero competitor response. Number 4, excessive cash caused by extreme profit margins. Number 5, excessive cash caused by no asset spending. Number 6, strange shareholdings. And number 7, crazy returns. Oh, for some product validation. Let's start with the first mistake, lack of product validation. All the time I see students who have not validated their product. Now there's 2 parts to this mistake. First, in not validating that a market exists for the product. And second, not validating that the product supplies the market with the correct solution. Now, many students fail to verify either of these things, and then they show up to a case competition expecting the judges just to believe when they say that people want what they're offering. Now, to solve this problem, a team should be testing their product continuously, and you should be able to provide the results of those tests as part of their business case presentation. Now, the first test can be internal, where the students test the usability of the products themselves. But take note that such testing will not be enough to convince a skeptical judge. Now, the next level of testing is to test with a third party, such as an external lab or other professional body that's qualified to provide an opinion. The third and best option would be to demonstrate the findings from a test performed together with a potential client, or if possible, many clients. And of course, the ultimate form of validation is a customer paying for your product. If you can bring that, pretty impressive. So you should do everything you possibly can to achieve product validation ahead of the competition, or at least provide some substantial evidence of where you are in the process of validation. Now, but what about your distribution costs? The second mistake students make is an unrealistic distribution strategy. MBA students often get so excited about their product idea that they forget about the mechanics of actually delivering it to customers. Now, to avoid this mistake, you should think of a business as a flow of raw materials coming into your process, your business, and then finished goods going out the other side. So, for example, in one case, students presented a business where the raw material was the waste left over after a rice harvest. Now, the same students failed to consider how the distribution of this raw material into their central factory is nearly impossible, as it would be coming from a wide network of small-scale farmers or suppliers. If they are to stick to this strategy, the students should then have a pretty compelling story about how suppliers would be incentivized to provide this raw material. Now, I have also seen that students rarely provide the necessary information to demonstrate the various channels that they'd use to bring their products to market. They also fail to identify the separate marketing strategies that each channel would need. To avoid this mistake, make sure you provide a thorough exploration of each distribution channel, including how you're going to find it, incentivize it, secure it, and optimize it. Delivery is an essential part of any business, and you must demonstrate to the judges that you have thought about this enough. Don't ignore competitor response. The third biggest mistake I see MBA students making is that they expect zero response from competitors. Now, in business case presentations, Students have a shiny new product that they're all excited about. They want to share it with the world. The reality is that if the idea is good enough, there will be at least a couple of similar existing products, or there'll be a large pool of potential competitors waiting to jump in and imitate or improve on your new product. Now, students often think that their product is so great or that they will get it to market so fast that any competitors will be caught off guard. Now, this is highly unlikely. It's much more likely that if the students can get their product to the market and it's in some way better, faster, cheaper than competitors, those competitors will respond quickly. They will swiftly try to match the benefits offered by students' new product. Now, if these existing competitors have the ability, they'll also try to reduce the price of their version of the product to drive down the profits of your proposed business until you can't survive any longer because you are out of cash. To solve this problem, you should brainstorm various reactions that could come from competitors and lay out a plan for how to mitigate those risks. This involves a high degree of proactive and strategic thinking. Successful student teams are ones that develop these actionable plans that anticipate potential competitor responses. Next, there's only one type of excess cash: not enough. As featured in the story of unrealistic profit margins. Now, the fourth mistake is projecting excess levels of cash caused by estimates of extremely high profit margins. Almost every case I judge miraculously predicts that the company will end up with tons of cash sitting in the bank. Sorry guys, but this ain't gonna happen. A good way to test that your projected cash level is realistic is to calculate the amount of cash relative to total assets in year 5. Anything over 20% is just nuts. Students usually make this mistake by overestimating the company's profit margins. To avoid the unrealistic profit margin mistake, students should compare net profit margin against companies operating in similar spaces. Now, the reality is that most companies do not differ greatly from the average of companies operating in the same sector. In some of my recent research, I calculated the typical net profit margin of nearly 20,000 companies worldwide over the past 15 years. The results? Well, the average company across the world generates, wait for it, a 5.5% net profit margin. Now, of course, this will vary across different industries. For instance, consumer discretionary companies generate about 4% net profit margin, while information tech companies generate roughly 8% on average. Now, when you look at your awesome company's expected profit margin, consider these examples. Actual net profit margins of super successful companies. Ready? Facebook, 39%. That's pretty amazing. Apple, 21% net profit margin, and Alphabet, 11%. You think your startup will beat that? It ain't gonna happen. The way to avoid this mistake is to find a few comparable companies and justify your net profit margin in comparison to them. Next, and the tale of excess cash from underinvestment continues. The second reason why students pile up tons of cash is that they don't account for the high amount of investment that will be needed to run your business. Now, there's two main types of investment in a business. Long-term investments, which are mainly fixed assets for traditional business, and working capital. Now, let's start with the first. My recent study of companies I mentioned before across the globe shows that 35% of a company's assets are fixed assets. By far, that's the most important of all asset classes. Now, usually in business case presentations, students start by forecasting a reasonable amount of fixed assets that they're going to need for startup. But where they go wrong is they don't expect those assets to grow by much. Now, this would imply fast revenue growth without much asset growth. And that is an unlikely outcome. Now, the second issue, which is almost always overlooked, is working capital. The two main asset items here are accounts receivable and inventory, which together account for about 22% of total assets in my study. Now, students forget that your startup company will likely have to give your customers good credit terms, and unfortunately, you will likely receive bad credit terms from your suppliers. Also, you'll end up holding more inventory than you thought because you may face like a minimum order quantity for buying that inventory. When my business partner and I started CoffeeWORKS years ago, we had to buy large lots of green coffee, and we got nearly no credit terms from our supplying coffee brokers. Naively, we did not expect that green coffee would tie up so much cash, but it did. So avoid this same mistake yourselves. Focus on your working capital needs and benchmark against comparable companies again if possible. Next, shareholding structure shock. The fifth mistake deals with strange shareholdings. Now, there are two extreme examples I have seen in business cases. The first is where the students are giving away too small of a share in the business, 2%. And the other occurs when they give away an overly large share in the business, 70%. Anything lower than 10%, and it will not be worth the potential investor's time to complete their due diligence. Anything higher than 49% would be nuts because you're effectively giving away the control of your business. You need to strike a careful balance. To avoid this mistake, the best practice for bringing in new shareholders is to offer new investors between 10 and 49% stake in your business. Now, if you have a great idea and you got great bargaining power, well, try damn hard to keep it close to 10%. Stranger things, unrealistic internal rate of returns, IRRs. The final mistake I see quite often is that MBA students forecast crazy high and strange internal rate of returns. I recently listened to a business idea that was expected to generate an IRR of 23%. This is just too low for a startup and would likely not attract any investors. So if your startup business does not generate an IRR between 30 to 40%, then find another business. A big problem that any investor knows is that it's nearly impossible to calculate properly an IRR before that proposed business even exists. We're making up numbers, really. A common IRR mistake is to overestimate it. So you should expect that your potential investors will knock down your IRR to adjust what they think is your optimism bias, and you are overly optimistic about your business. So you probably don't want to present an IRR that's below 50%. Consider, though, that presenting an IRR of 90% or higher will be hard to justify. Of course, if your business turns out to be the next big thing in the world, it's very possible that you could generate such a high IRR. But to make it realistic, I would target between 50 and 90% IRR. If you must stretch your financial projections like a rubber band to get in this range, then you may not have a financially attractive business. Now that about sums it up for the most common and fatal mistakes MBA students make when they're competing in startup business case presentations. Now, to summarize, number one, validate your product. Number two, think through your distribution strategy. Number three, expect competitor response. Number four, keep your profit margins reasonable. Number five, account for significant spending on assets. Number six, offer 10 to 49% of shareholding to new investors, but keep it as close to 10% as possible. And number seven, make sure your return forecasts are reasonable. Clear that checklist next time you enter a startup case competition, and you will see a judge like me smile rather than frown.